Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm swell, Bob. How are you this lovely evening?
I am very excited that we are here. I'm very excited that this is a Tuesday. Welcome to the Pop Culture Squadcast Live for Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. I wrote 2025 a couple of times today. We're getting there. Um,
I can't tell what year it is because I don't write checks anymore.
yeah, nobody does. So that's all right.
Nobody does,
You
right?
shouldn't.
Yeah. And so the year is meaningless. I don't need to put it on my checks.
That is fair. All right. We are going to flush the format, as they say on radio, and we're going to do something a little different that we don't normally do. Um, our guest is already here, and she is eager to join the show. So we're going to bring in our guest very early. We're going to do a couple of our dialogue, but we're going to make it a trialogue tonight. So before we get into some of the a couple of bits of comic-y nerdness, we're going to bring in our guest, and I'm super excited for this. I've been wanting to talk to her in this type of format for a long time, but she's a friend of ours, a friend of mine. I love talking to her at all times, and she's a super talented writer. And welcome to the show, Kami Garcia. Hi, Kami.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for
Welcome to the show. So we're going to jump into a bit of stuff first before we get to talking to you about things.
Hi, Kami.
Hey, how are you?
I'm okay. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.
So film and TV news. Some news for the day. It has been announced that Variety and other outlets have announced that an animated version of Rachel Smythe's webcomic Lore Olympus has been ordered to series for Amazon Prime Video service. The person who did the Winchesters and Willow will serve as a showrunner. It's in partnership with Amazon MGM Studios and the Jim Henson Company, and I think that's going to be a hit. If there's ever been a comic to jump off of the vertical scroll and become a hit, it is Lore Olympus. Not to say anything about any others, but it is the biggest. It is the biggest. It is the most popular. It is got the hugest fandom. I think it's going to be fantastic.
By biggest, you're referring to circulation.
I think so, but award-winning year after year.
It's wildly popular.
I understand that. Yeah.
You've seen like probably more cosplayers from that webtoon than any other webtoon. It's the woman who's walking around who's pink.
I would be surprised if it's not the highest selling.
It probably is. I mean, it probably is. I just don't have the details and numbers. I would be surprised.
So you don't have a clue what the highest selling might be?
Do you?
No.
Okay, I'll find out while we're talking.
I could make it up, but
so I mean, now you have experience with Amazon, Mike.
I have had experience with Amazon. Yes.
We hope that this is better than your experience with Amazon.
Well,
it wasn't. Yeah, it's not necessarily Amazon's fault, but we're talking.
No, for every deal that you think you have, or that gets to a certain point, when you get to that point, the odds are only about 200 to 1 against you. When you started, they were like 10,000 to 1 against you. So when you get up to that 200 range, you feel like you've won something. But 199 times out of 200, you ain't got squat. So That's show business. I can't begin to tell you how many Bibles I've written. There could be a religion based upon the Bibles I've written.
So I don't know if I can find this, but I do know that Lore Olympus has been seen 1.4 billion times.
Wow. And that doesn't even include the people who bought it as like in novel
Yeah,
form.
that doesn't account. That's just on Webtoon.
Wow.
Today?
No,
1 billion today?
1.4 billion in its history. There's 6.6 million subscribers.
Wow. That's more than us.
It is more than us by a couple. I think that's big news. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about comics in general right now. I think we were in a bit of a lull through the holidays, and I think that there's some good stuff coming out. That we'll probably talk about.
Tomorrow's going to be a very expensive day for me.
It is. There's a bunch of existing runs that are coming out this week that are very good. And there's a bunch of some new stuff that's coming out. What's expensive for you tomorrow? Is there a big one?
Well, in terms of expense, the Atlas Library number, I don't know, 6, 8, they're reprinting probably one of the very few Marvel books I've never read, which was their imitation of Mad Magazine called Snafu. And I'm interested, not because it's just another Mad doppelganger, which it is, and almost all of those suck, but because it's mostly Joe Maniglia work, and that's fine by me.
I mean, I agree with you. That's fine. It's there's a lot of stuff, but I need to come back one more time to film and TV stuff because we didn't talk last week about it. You were having technical difficulties, which you have recovered from, but Exquisite Corpses is also
in part, only in parts.
Yes, you're making it through. Exquisite Corpses, which is a book, has also been optioned for film development, which I think is like James's 18th film development option in the last 4 months.
You can make a great living just turning over options.
I understand.
And not doing any work, except you deserve to be paid to be in those meetings.
I mean, some people who are here have also done that and and have become films that they have things that they've written, and looking
Indeed.
at you, Kami.
I have, but I agree with Mike. Like, it's very rare that it happens, and when it does, it's still like not what you expect. Like people think like, I know if obviously you're like Rachel probably has a lot of control. If you are like a phenom, when you option something, you have a lot of say. But we optioned our film rights before our book even came out.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it was like an auction option, and it was kind of like option it or roll the dice and maybe never option it. So we optioned it, but what comes along with that is you're just kind of like a guest at the party.
Right. Yeah. Maybe. And sooner or later, most of them will forget about you.
I mean, we got to be guests mostly because I think they wanted us for like that, making of the movie book and like thing at the end of the DVD. But we got to hang out on the set and see everything. And honestly, that's the part that like was the most interesting, to see how like all these super talented people, like it really did look like this fantasy universe that we had created. It was like standing in the room of, these make-believe people that we had spent, 8 years with. It was interesting.
One of the reasons I respect James Gunn a lot, other than the fact that his movies make me laugh, is that he was really good at giving the comics creators, their due. John Ostrander's been a friend of mine since pretty much Earth hardened, and he's been out there in California and in Georgia several times, and John is actually even older than me. So getting him around is harder than getting me around, and I FedEx myself to conventions, so I respect the hell out of Gunn. That's great.
This is the other piece of TV news we want to remind people of. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but Beauty debuts tomorrow night. The Beauty debuts, and I'm very excited for this. I'm excited for it because it looks really good. It's got some great cast. Also excited about it because of Jeremy. Jeremy Hahn is co-creator of this and a friend of ours, and he is an executive producer on it, which is one of the examples of optioning something and actually getting invited to the party a little bit more than most. And I'm excited for that, and it's going to be good. So the Beauty is going to be on whatever, and if the mouse owns it, it's on that tomorrow.
Really? Yeah, I see FX.
Yeah, Disney
Hulu,
Plus
and
and
Disney.
yeah, you if the mouse owns it, you can watch the Beauty.
Jeez, what if all you have is ABC?
That one you can't do it. Only one. All right, I had another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I got to stop with this. I got to fix my settings at some point. It's going to pop in, but this is a viewer question. A viewer of ours and a friend of ours had posited this question, and it's about some old art that you may be familiar with. So let me remove this. Put in what I want. Share screen.
My sense is going off.
Yeah, here. It's this.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So for those who aren't familiar, we're now looking at the question. This art is by Dennis Cowan. Mike was the editor of the question that Dennis Cowan drew. The question, the query that was posed about this question drawing is related to this piece. Oh, back. Don't want to do that. We went too far. Sorry. Here you go. This piece right here. This that looks like a tail here and is not here in this updated version of it. Was that a just coloring mistake here?
I don't know. It looks like it was a decision somebody made to change it, but I'd have to be there to have known. And the one on the left is from the Who's Who. I'm taking, I assume. Yeah. So well, Bobby Greenberger lives near you.
I know. I figured it was either going to be you or Bobby that would know. I will ask Bob. But
no, it looks like somebody said they didn't like the gray tones. They wanted to pump it up a little bit more towards standard blue.
Well, I believe that this is like the recolored version in like the current modern version. But I believe that I think the question is related to this tie forming a tangent with this, and that when it was penciled, maybe it was inked where that came in there, but I feels like
it looks like a tailcoat.
It looks like a tailcoat.
Yeah,
but I don't know if that was supposed to be the question. This is difficult because it's a question, but the idea is that something that was supposed to be inked with a hard line here, or was that just supposed to be the side of the tie? And therefore nothing there.
Well, I don't think I knew even
you didn't know that
35 years ago when this was done. But if I did know, I've forgotten it. It's a great piece. It's a great piece, and Dennis's work is astonishing, and I remain really happy whenever anybody mentions the question to me. It's one of my favorite projects. Working with Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan was one of the highlights of my career. Sharing an office with Denny O'Neil for 3 years was one of the highlights of my career. So when I look back, I'm sort of overwhelmed by this fanboy fog.
So Dean is giving a definitive that is the back of the tailcoat.
Well, Gene may have lent him the tailcoat.
Did he normally wear a tailcoat?
Often, but I don't know that this jacket is that. like
No,
you
I
did.
agree with you. Could also be the side of the tie.
Yeah. I don't know. My opinion is it's a mistake that it was inked hard, and then or the coloring was odd. I don't know. We'll have to get Dennis on the show and ask him, because he'll probably remember. I don't
You
think he'll
think?
remember.
He won't remember.
I don't think he's gonna remember at all.
No. I doubt it.
But the question was posed, the concept of that query was out there. So I had promised our watcher and good friend Paul Story, who brought it up to our attention, that we would ask you. And so you missed last week, so I didn't get to do it then. So I'm doing it now. And
And
Dean,
I'm just as helpful as I was last week.
You are. Last week we had Emma Kubert on, and she did some work with you, Kami, early on, and she did a lot of the layouts for the first Raven book. And I wanted to talk about let's start with talking about the Raven book, because I think that was
That was
instrumental
my first comic graphic novel work.
Right. And we'll talk about, I want to talk about your prose as well, but let's start with this. And you had done quite a bit of prose for 10 years or so, and then you were approached to do Raven. Why don't you talk to our listeners? Can you talk to our listeners about, I mean, I know this story, but I like how you tell it.
Originally it wasn't Raven. They just said they were doing this kids and young adult line, and they wanted established authors who already had like a lot of experience, and and also like a lot of relationship with their fans. Like we really knew what our fans loved, and they wanted us to take on some of their characters in this new out of continuity line, so that what was said to me was, once I met initially with Michelle and Marie Javins, and initially they were kind of like, would you like to write one of our characters? And I had done IP before for X-Files and had a great experience. So I was like, oh, that, I would love that. And they said, you can pick, there's a lot of options. And I said, I want to do Wonder Woman. And they said, Laurie Halse Anderson is doing Wonder Woman. And Laurie is much more experienced and fancy than me. So I was like, okay. And then I said, I want to do the Joker. And they said, that's not what we're doing. And they said, who else do you like? They said, what about Supergirl? And I was like, I don't know. And then they said, well, who else do you like? And I said, I really like the Teen Titans. And they were like, well, that would be great. We would love the Teen Titans. And they basically, what was said to me was, we want to get people, particularly my, age readership. I had a lot of adult crossover, a lot of, women, I mean, from, their 20s to grandmothers. They said, we really want to get people who do not normally read comics and graphic novels, either because they think they're not interested or they're intimidated. We want to get them to read our books. And, we want you to use what you know about, prose readers and your readership to write something that they would want to read. And I wrote a series pitch. When they said the Teen Titans, apparently they meant pick one, but I did not understand that. So I wrote a very long, very detailed pitch of 6 books my pitch had a table of contents. It was like the real deal. But the ones that were the most fleshed out were Raven and Beast Boy. Because those are the ones that I instinctively wanted to be able to start with, one of those. And, there was a lot of, I lived in LA at the time, so it was much easier for me to like come into the office and stuff. And there was a lot of question about because I wrote it so that we could either start with the group book and go backwards and then get to Origins, or vice versa. But I had told Jim and Dan, who were, co-publishers, that I really wanted to do them as Origins. So I came in the office and I had to meet with them and, Hank and Bob Harris and all these people, basically the head of sales at the time, and have this meeting about, what they said. We like this idea of what are we going to start with? And Dan and I had this long talk about how we both love Titans. And, he always thought Titans should be more popular. He's like, I love the Titans. Like, I just, I don't understand why, they're not even more, huge. And I was like, I agree. Like, I think they're fantastic. But what I did say to him is, in general, and you find this in novels as well. When you start with a group and you only have 22 pages, versus a full novel or, an extended, like Black Label where you get 50 pages, it's really hard to establish a group and like who everybody is and get everyone invested in each character before they have to like take on the world in order, to do all of that and solve the problem by the end of page 22, or at least have like a nice little mini arc. So I said, I think that at least for my readership, teens, particularly prose readers, they will be more invested if we start with the origins. We start with the origin. We tell them everything they need to know about this character to be able to read the series. Because I said, listen, the biggest obstacle in comics is that people who don't read comics don't understand runs. They think if you want to read the Teen Titans, you have to go back and read every single book that's ever been written. And sometimes even with runs, they can't find a copy of something. Not everyone understands that most comics are collected. So those are all barriers of entry. But I also think that a lot of people have been conditioned, especially, of a certain age, been conditioned to believe that like, comics are all just like superhero and like, you're just going to save the world. And none of these characters have like a lot going on, which is not true. And I always tell people, like, I use the Christopher Reeve Superman movies as like an example. I'm like, like Superman's always had a lot going on, but I think those are the barriers into comics. So I said, like, what I would like to do is, find the right artist, do something super relatable, really lean into the characters. And I really want them to look like regular teenagers. I want it to feel like Raven could be at your school, Beast Boy could be at your school and have powers, and you would have no idea. So that it could feel like you could be friends with these characters. And that was the biggest part of my pitch. And I said very frankly to the large group of people in the room, like, I can't guarantee anything, but I will tell you, I feel very confident that I can deliver if I'm able to start with the origins. I will say I do not feel as confident about readers coming over if I'm writing a book about, 5 or 6 people that they don't know. And
Right.
so as a group, everyone was like, okay, let's start with the origin. And, I think a lot of people were like, I think you should start with Raven. And I was like, that would be great, because she is very similar. She's supernatural. I've written about supernatural girls in my prose books. I think she's perfect. And so at that point, we were like, well, we need to have an artist. And there was a lot of like, I don't even remember, but a lot of people were sent my way, and they were all, of course, like crazy talented. But I said, like, part of the problem, the other thing is like, we don't want this to look like a DCU or like a Marvel canon comic. We want this to look different. So again, we're like trying to bring that intimidation factor down. So people aren't like, oh, this is the same thing we've seen just in like a little book. And I know when everyone was very supportive and understanding about that. And we all were kind of like coming up with people. And I went on Pinterest, which is like my social media of choice. Like, I'm in my 50s. And also I just, I also just love Pinterest. And I put in, Teen Titans comic book art. And, of course, George's stuff came up and all these different things started coming up. And then what was very clearly fan art started coming up. But what struck me about the fan art, besides the fact that the person was clearly talented, was that the characters were wearing regular clothes, which is what I had pitched. So I was like, this is what I want. So I actually brought it to them. Marie Javins actually already was like, I have this kid on my radar. And I really do believe that Marie was like my fighter behind the scenes on that one, because she was my editor at the time. It ended up changing because she went to JLA, but in the beginning, she was supposed to be my editor. And she, went to bat. And I remember I kept saying, like, have we heard back? And she was like, not yet. And DC decided, they were like, first of all, this person has not made a comic before. And by the way, neither of you. And we would like someone on this expensive project to have done this before. And I said, well, like, my editor's done this before. And, I've read a million graphic novels and comics, and I had read,
totally qualified.
I had read Bendis's book about writing. I've read everything I could get my hands on about writing comics. Actually, I've read so many scripts. So, she was like, okay, we're gonna give him like a job and try him out, see if he turns in his, if he can follow directions, if he turns everything in on time. And he did. But one of the caveats was, I'm not sure, it might have been either Michelle Wells or Marie was like, let's get a layout artist though, because that is like the most important kind of storytelling element that somebody really needs to have experience with. And that way that person will kind of be the glue where the things you two don't know, they will be filling in those holes. Like they'll help shape this in a way that, like, as you're learning, you're not missing things that are important. And I was
Training
like,
wheels, almost.
And so I wrote the script, and there was actually very little changes. And Emma Kubert came on. I actually didn't get to meet her till way later. I didn't meet her when I was working with her. I didn't even talk to her. But they had her doing layouts, and then John Samariva ended up taking over later. And it was great. Gabriel originally didn't answer the emails that DC sent. They sent him emails to offer him the job, and he didn't answer, and no one could figure out why. And I said, he's like, 23 years old and he's getting emails from DC. He probably thinks they're fake. And they were like, that's ridiculous. We have the logo on our emails. So finally, like, the fancy people stopped emailing him, and they had someone's assistant or something email him and offer him something to do a poster for a promo. And he wrote back. And later he said the reason he didn't reply is because they looked fake, because he thought the logo looked really fake.
Yeah. Get used to it. We're going to be seeing more responses like that every single day. The really cool thing about YA books for me is that you're writing for people who might even be a little too intimidated to go into a comic book store if there happens to be one in their neighborhood, which is unlikely to begin with. Comic book stores can be very intimidating.
They are. And I love comics. And I remember the first time I went in Third Eye, I was like, I don't even know what to do in here, like where to start. And I knew characters. Like I knew I wanted to find X-Men and, Batman, but I was still like, what is happening in this place? This is like the size of a warehouse.
Listen, I go there, a couple of times, about 10 times a year, because it's not my local, but I still can't find anything because the way their stacks are just everywhere. There's so much.
There's just so many options too. It's like, I was like, I want to read Fables and I want to read Saga, it's like, I want to reread this. And I was just like, I got to like pull it together. But I had been going there for years, because in the original location of Third Eye, the smaller location, we used to take my son there when he was little. So I had been going there forever, way before I ever even thought I would write a comic. But yeah, like, so that was kind of how we started. And Gabriel and I were like thick as thieves from the beginning. And everybody we worked with was amazing. And, like, we put our chocolate and peanut butter together, and like, we got a Reese's. So.
and this summer we get this finally.
Yeah. It's really bittersweet. That is book 6. It's really sad because
it's not sad. It's great. It's fantastic.
It's also like hard because, like, literally, like, we've been doing this for 8 years.
I'm very excited for it.
I do think though, like, we worked really hard on it. Our editors really pushed us, and like, because I really wanted to stick the landing. Like, I really wanted this to be like the end that the readers who have been around since the beginning, are going to feel like satisfied by this.
I want to come back to Mike. You were saying about the difference between comic shops and where young readers, YA readers, can find, comics in other places too, so much easier. Is that what you were trying to get at?
Well, yeah. I mean, it is an intimidating experience, and it's particularly intimidating for younger readers and for women, because it is still so much a boys' club, and those boys are really old. So, you're not going to get a good permanent experience the first time you walk into a comic book store. The cool thing about going into a bookstore, and we're getting them back now, is that if you're a kid and you're going there with one of your parents or many of your parents, you got somebody to pay for it.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's important. That's
That is a
critical.
benefit.
That is a definite benefit. They're not going to walk into, they're not as likely to walk into a comic book store. And if they do, they're going to be just completely overwhelmed by the experience. And if they're smart, they're going to get their kid out of there as fast as possible. But
I will say when we went on tour, even 7 years ago, there are stores like Third Eye, like Challengers. Like I was really impressed with just in the time from this when just from the years from when my son was young to that point, 5 years or so, how much children's stuff some of these stores have brought in for even little kids. Like I was just really impressed because I feel like a lot of stores are trying to address that. Like they're trying to make their stores family friendly and make, kids and women and girls and everybody feel comfortable. So
right.
like I think that's amazing. And it's a really, like I feel like they're making a really concerted effort to do that.
Well, Challengers is one of my favorite, probably my favorite comic book store ever. And 20 years ago, when they started, they made a very conscious decision to reach out to the younger audience at a point in time when a lot, and probably the majority of comic book stores, were told that kids are bad for business, which
Yeah.
I think is the stupidest thing I've heard that doesn't have the word Trump in it. And that appalled me. And these guys from day one did it right. And they had an area where it's safe. The name of the store is Challengers Comics and Conversation.
Yeah.
You can sit there, you can talk with your friends, and it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what your gender. It doesn't matter whether you like superhero comics or you like horror comics. It doesn't matter. We're all there for the same reason. There are other stores like Challengers. I will always go off and plug Challengers because they're my friends. But
I like that store too.
yeah, it's a great place, and there's a wonderful hot dog stand nearby.
I want to talk about the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is super important. And when I know I had heard about this from another mutual friend of ours, but you did this book Mixed Up that came out last year. Is it last year or the year before?
Yeah, it just came out last year.
Can you talk to us about Mixed Up and what makes it special for you?
So Mixed Up is my first middle grade original graphic novel. It's actually my first middle grade anything. The artist, I did it with artist Brittany Williams, who also did a Lois Lane comic for, she's done a lot. She's done Goldie Vance. She also did Lois Lane for the kids line, DC's graphic novel kids line. She's done Ben 10 stuff. And she was my artist. And I had this idea. My daughter is dyslexic, and I was a teacher for 17 years before I really became a writer. And I had to leave teaching because of Beautiful Creatures and how big that book got. And I really always felt very guilty about it. I felt like a big sellout for leaving. I just felt terrible because I was a reading teacher and, we don't have enough teachers. And it was interesting because once I did Raven, all of a sudden it kind of occurred to me, my daughter was dyslexic. She did not like to read at all. And all of a sudden I was like, I did this book, Raven, and it was a Junior Library Guild selection. It was a YALSA quick pick for American Library Association. And I was like, I know now how to do graphic novels. And I know there aren't enough dyslexia graphic novels. And I also think that in general, dyslexia is, it's a touchstone for a lot of things. There's a lot of neurodivergent kids. There's a lot of kids that are struggling with invisible disabilities, with many different things that make them different. And I really didn't write it. Dyslexic kids always are like, you wrote it for me. I really wrote it for the people who weren't. Because I was like, I want the kids who are not dyslexic, who are not neurodivergent, to understand how that feels, to create the empathy, to really understand what it's like, and to be able to relate because their own struggles, make them insecure or scared or what have you. So I came up with the premise for it, and I got Brit, and First Second acquired it. And it was great. As we worked, it became very clear. One of the most important things to us and my editor, Aaron Stein, was that we wanted it to be in a dyslexia friendly font. And they are notoriously difficult to work with because they have a lot of size constraints. So to work with, especially dyslexia, which is the one we used, you're not only dealing with like the letters are heavier on the bottom, you're dealing with math. It's like the letters have to be a certain distance, the lines have to be a certain distance, and then the edges of the letters have to be a certain distance from the balloon. So it's like all of this stuff. And it was really difficult. And I talked them into hiring a letterer that I had worked with on Joker, who I knew was like a pro and could totally handle it. His name's Tyler Smith. He's at Comicraft. And I had to like get permission because Comicraft doesn't, they only letter in their fonts. So I had to like pitch to Richard Starkings. I said, like, if you had a dyslexia font, like I would use it, but like you don't have one. So at least not yet. And so I was like, can he just have permission to do this? And what I didn't know was that Tyler's son is neurodivergent. He's on the spectrum. And Tyler said to me, I've never worked on anything that I could like read to my son, that I could be like, this is what I do. And he said, I really want to work on a book that I can read to him and he can really see and understand what I do. So Richard was like, you can do it. And we kind of got together and we created this book. Britt is also on the spectrum. So everybody on the project, I have ADHD, which is not the same as dyslexia at all, but we all understand neurodivergence. And this was literally a labor of love. And like, I'm just so happy that kids are responding to it. I'm so happy that, people are finding it and that they feel seen. The other thing that's fun about it is the character in the book is an artist and she is making a comic book in the book.
There you go. Awesome. There you go. Kami, you said you talked about your work as a teacher.
Yeah.
And you refer to it in the past tense. And
Yes.
I beg to differ.
Oh, I appreciate that. This is what I felt like. It felt like magic because I was like, I can take this career that I had as a reading specialist, and then I can take this career as a writer and this thing I've now learned how to do because of DC, and I can make something using both of those things. So that is really what made it feel really magical, was I got to take like my past career and my career now and like use both of them.
I've been able to do that a few times with comics, and it's a lovely feeling.
It is, right?
It's really a lovely feeling.
I am also in the book. Miss Marin, the teacher in the book, is based on me, and she looks awesome. A lot like me, except for she wears like clothes with apples and stuff that I did not wear. But Britt was very creative with all of the outfits, so I wasn't going to be like, I don't have an apple vest.
Part of the reason why I wanted to talk about it was the use of dyslexia and dyslexic friendly fonts. Or I don't know if that's the right term, but I've talked to it's Rob Pacek is the guy we were talking about, and I know he talked to me a bunch about it when that he's trying to use that and working with that, and we had Tom Zoller and I had talked about your use.
I love Tom.
Yeah, so that's what reminded me of it. He left the conversation.
Smith, who wrote the book about using comics in classrooms, he and I have talked a lot about it too, and he's incredibly knowledgeable.
It's super important. I think it's I've had this conversation. It just came up recently. Somebody posted, I think Christy posted about how reposted something where there are the concept of how comic book readers tend to be have a lot of vocabulary because of the visual, story that's in front of you that allows the writers to use more, complex words, and so that you gain that type of vocabulary knowledge. It's different, and comic readers typically have more comic books.
So the interesting thing, because I had to fight a lot of parents when I was a teacher about the fact that I allowed my kids to read graphic novels in my classroom. Now there is research. Reading a graphic novel is more difficult in terms of it is more challenging for your brain than reading prose. It also develops more critical thinking skills and vocabulary acquisition for exactly the reason you're talking about. But it also, you develop critical thinking skills because the story is also happening in the gutters. So one thing that we're constantly trying to teach kids how to do is make predictions, make comparisons, predict what's going to happen. And they're doing that automatically when they're reading comics.
Sure.
And it's a very hard skill to teach in the classroom. The other thing that I always tell people is comics level the playing field because, for example, like I was talking to some high school teachers and I said, if I was going to teach Romeo and Juliet, middle school, if I was going to teach Romeo and Juliet in 8th grade, I would read the Romeo and Juliet graphic novel first. So that everyone in the room, number one, so you get buy-in, the kids are interested because all the boys that I ever tutored, when they brought Romeo and Juliet, they look so depressed when they bring that to my house. So like they get to see what the story's like. They get to see that there's like fighting and adventure. But also everybody gets to understand. And then you read the actual play. But you allow the kids that are struggling readers, second language learners, neurodivergent, all these other things that are barriers for reading, you allow them to understand the story in the same way and have discussions with their friends, at their level, instead of they can only read books that are 3 years behind what everyone else is reading.
Yeah,
so,
which does not help anybody
at all. The other thing I would like to point out, because most people don't know this, is not only are all of my DC Young Readers books in dyslexia-friendly fonts, all of the DC Young Readers middle grade and YA are in dyslexia-friendly fonts. All of them.
That's
which
great.
is an intentional decision.
Well, what's really enigmatic about this process is that comic book storytelling is a visual experience, and writers who don't understand that tend not to succeed.
Yes.
But because it's a visual experience, because you see what's going on, and it should not be redundant of the dialogue,
Agreed.
It allows the writer to use some language here and there that the reader can, particularly a younger reader, can infer because of the visuals.
Yeah.
So you actually have a greater opportunity.
Yeah, because the art is a scaffold. It's helping them create context so that they can learn what all these more sophisticated words mean.
Exactly.
There are words that I know today that I know that I learned reading comic books, like oblivion. I learned that reading comic books.
Yeah.
Idiot. I learned the word idiot from Mad Magazine. I can even tell you the issue number.
The other thing that research shows is that, which is really interesting, is that because I got the opposite argument from parents. My kid's never going to read real books if they read comics. So the other thing that they found was when they did studies of younger children that read comics and followed them all the way through high school, by the time they were in high school, they read more widely across genres that included both comics and prose. So they were reading more genres. They were more open to reading. They also read more frequently for pleasure, like by choice, than people who had never read comic books. So it's really like, it's creating what as teachers we always want, which is to create lifelong readers.
Exactly. To read. One of the things I'd noticed in my work was that you're also turning younger readers onto history.
Yeah.
And you get them into the nonfiction ends of things too.
Yeah.
Which is great because they need to know that history is more than the 44-minute thing you saw on TV, and that's wonderful. It makes us smarter.
And there's a lot of great graphic novels about history. David Walker wrote an amazing one about the Black Panthers. Like
we have, yes, yes.
Like there's a whole. I think First Second. I'm not sure if it's First Second, but somebody, I think it's First Second, has a whole line of science comics. Like each one, covers a science concept. Right. And they're amazing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's almost like we're part of the real world now, but not quite. And that's good. And that's good. Let me tell you the transitional moment in my life for that whole phenomenon. I was at the American Booksellers Association convention because I was at the American Booksellers Association convention, and usually it's a very tough experience. There's 23 billion people there, and this was way back in the days when they'd actually give you free books.
Yeah, I
So,
did the ABA. It's fun.
yeah, so you're carrying around all this stuff, and it's wonderful. Now, a friend of mine, friend of ours, Mark Evanier, wrote a book about Jack Kirby. It hadn't come out yet. He was Jack's assistant at DC for many years, and he wrote the definitive book about Kirby. And I heard that they were giving away poster covers of the book. So fanboy Mike took a couple seconds out and went over there, and there was this very long line. A very long line. And I'm looking and I'm going, these are all librarians. These are all school librarians.
Yeah.
So snotty little bastard that I am, I started asking. And it's, yep, school librarian, yep. And it's, when I was in school, they would shoot you. Take your comic book, rip it up, and then shoot you.
And there are still some people who would, but we have so many librarians that are not that, closed-minded now.
Well, also, they didn't grow up through the Wortham days and through the, comics of juvenile delinquency, and thank God for rock and roll. That took that pressure off of us. But
the only benefit.
Oh, no.
Our Titans books are really popular with librarians, and my favorite compliment is they very often tell me that they're the most stolen books from a library.
I have heard that for decades, that the comic book reprint books in libraries are the most stolen books. And what's unusual is that, well, for me, is that I took some pride in that.
I was super proud.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I still think it's really cool.
So one thing that a lot of people also don't know about Titans is I wrote Titans for libraries because Beast Boy and Raven take place at the same time in two different locations, and they're both origins. So you can technically read them in either order. Because with my Beautiful Creatures readers, where that's a series you cannot read out of order. And kids would constantly come to me and say, I can't read this series because the first book's always checked out. So I was like, I'm going to create a series where you can read the second book if the first book is checked out.
That's
for
awesome.
You. Good for you. That's great.
But it does confuse a lot of people. I will also say that.
But yeah, it's really smart. That's great.
Sure. I love the fact. Now I'm a Teen Titans fanatic from the early 80s, and they have changed significantly over time, which is fine. I think, but I also do. I don't know. It feels like the way that Raven and Beast Boy are in current continuity has something to do with what you've been doing.
I don't know. I know. And I again don't think it was influenced by me, but Tom Taylor and I are big fans of each other, and
Sure.
He is, also someone who really brings characters down to earth.
Sure.
So, I don't know. I don't know, but I influence anyone, honestly. But I do.
Tom definitely leaned into it.
Well, one thing that was really important to me was not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I am a Titans fan, and I was like, I really want new readers, but I also want Titans fans to be able to enjoy this. I don't want them to be like, these are unrecognizable characters, and I hate this, because that has happened to me. And
me too.
One of the most intimidating things that happened to me was DC engineered a meeting between myself and Marv Wolfman, because I said I did not want to meet Marv Wolfman because I was afraid he would be mad at me. So they engineered us running into each other at the office, which was staged and fake. You could tell when it happened. And he also clearly knew we were going to lunch, which I did not know. He was, of course, the nicest, most gracious person ever. And I remember I said to him, like, is there anything like you don't want me to do? Like, is there anything like, that's really important to you? And he said, I just want you to make people who don't know who Raven is love her as much as I do. And I was like, I will try for that. I was like, that seems attainable.
What DC did to you with Marv, I did the exact same thing, right down to the lunch with Bob.
Oh yeah,
that's how you met Marv Wolfman.
Well,
that's pretty cool.
No, I had met him before. I had met him before, but that was actually the second time I had dinner with him. Tom took me to dinner with him the first time in Chicago, but I was not expecting. The picture I have of Marv is from the lunch we had. So
he's the nicest person.
He is wonderful.
He's also really knowledgeable, and it was really interesting to hear him talk about his characters and what inspired him and things like that. I mean, it's always fun to hear other writers talk.
The funniest thing about the first time I went out to dinner with Marv, Tom Zoller and I were out. It was Tom Zoller and myself and my wife and Tom's girlfriend at the time and Marv. And Tom and I were kind of talking to Marv and about stuff. And we were talking about, I don't know, something related. I think it must have something that happened after Flashpoint, and maybe it was New 52 and the refixing of Superman in New 52. And Marv's kind of like leaning into the conversation. He's like, well, what is like, oh, we're just talking about, the latest DC crisis. And he said, oh, are they still doing that? I'm sorry.
Yes. The perfect response. I'll tell you a quick Marv Wolfman story. We were having an appearance. A friend of mine owned a comic book store for 35 years in Chicago. And by Marv's Teen Titans, Marv and George, had just come out and had just become a huge hit. So, my friend asked me if I could, get Marv to do his store, to do a signing. Sure, what the hell? Marv loves Chicago. We were having a great time. Nobody showed up.
What?
It was well promoted. It was on a Saturday afternoon. The weather wasn't bad. Nobody could figure it out. It was just one of those. Weird. Yes. It's like Ripley's Believe It or Not, Except we had one guy come in, and it made Marv's day because that guy was Gene Siskel, who was a big comics fan. Gene had 3 separate collections of Conan. Just Conan. I mean, he read other stuff too. Ebert was the same way, but he was upfront about that. Nobody knew about Siskel's closet obsession with comics. And after Gene left, I went out with him and I said, thanks for coming. We're really surprised about the lack of attendance. He says, yeah, I was really surprised too, but that's not why I came. I just came here to pick up my comic books.
That's funny. I want to turn back to a little bit of Kami. You mentioned earlier that you have when you were approached about joining and writing the DC stuff, you had done some licensed stuff, and so you created a pretty impressive career writing young adult prose and fantasy and stuff like that. And then you also did an X-Files book.
I did.
And then that, because you had done that, kind of you felt like comfortable about approaching comics. But what was that project like, working on a licensed project for the first time where you had done all your own stuff prior to it?
So number one, I think that is why I did a great job on Titans, because I really learned, I knew what I did and didn't want to do because everything had gone so well with X-Files. X-Files project was the brainchild of Jonathan Maberry, who wrote V-Wars, the comic V-Wars, who is there are 2 people that can talk me into doing anything, even if I really don't want to. And he is one of them. And he called me and he said, I want you to be in this anthology. And I was like, and I've been in his anthologies before. So I was like, okay, what is it? And he said, it's X-Files. And I was like, there's no way. Like, I can't, like, I'm behind on everything. I can't do a rewatch. Like, and I'm not going to I love the X-Files. I'm not going to do a terrible X-Files story amongst all of these. So the interesting thing was there were prose stories. IDW was publishing these 2 volumes of prose stories with all of these screenwriters. And I was like, yeah, I'm not making a fool of myself. I think not. And Jonathan was like, what if you didn't have to do a rewatch? And I'm like, that's impossible, to do a good job. And he said, not if you write Teen Mulder. So then he had me immediately, as I'm sure he knew he would. And what he didn't tell me was this was part of a larger scheme that Jonathan had, which he is smart, because if I knew, I probably would have been intimidated and not done it at all. So we did the stories, and all of the stories had to go to IDW, Fox, and Chris Carter and his team, because they all owned joint narrative rights. And what I didn't know is that Jonathan had been pitching Teen X-Files for years. And they had said, there's no way that will work. So Jonathan sent them the story. And because everything had to be approved. And he said, they called him up and said, how do we get more of this? And he goes, this is the thing that I pitched all this time. And they were like, okay, well, we want more of it. And he called me up and told me what he had done and said, I want to do this with you. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he said, but we need a publisher to license it. They're not going to make it. So little did he know that my prose editor was the president of the X-Files fan club in college. And no one loves X-Files like she does. She was also in licensing. So I called Erin. This is Christmas vacation. So it's the 22nd or something. And I said, this is the deal. And she goes, you and Jonathan don't email anyone, don't call anyone, don't do anything. I will handle this. And I'm not exaggerating. 10 days into January, she had full executed contracts.
Oh my!
I don't know which, to sign, because we said we would not let them announce it if we didn't have a contract knowing it was real. We weren't going to promote something and then have them be like, no, you're not really doing it. So I'm pretty sure she came up with the idea, because I think we were originally going to write something together, and then we were trying to figure it out. And she was like, what if one of you does Mulder and one of you does Scully at the same time? They obviously won't meet, but within the books, there will be shared locations that things that they both do and go to. So we decided, because Scully, her dad was, lived at the Naval Academy. She was like, we'll do that. And then we'll say that Mulder is spending the summer after high school graduation with his dad in DC. So that was the premise.
And you have no experience with that.
And it was set in 79. It was the most fun probably I've ever had. It was, there's no phones. It was so much fun. I got to research the FBI in 79. And I created this whole serial killer. Basically, Jonathan's is cult and mine is serial killer. So I created this whole, basically kids start disappearing in DC and bodies start popping up. And it is very reminiscent to Mulder, at least, of my premise in the short story was he was suspicious for a while that maybe there was a serial killer or someone who had taken his sister, because there was no why was the door open? There was just no explanation. So in mine, when these murders start happening, it's very traumatic for him. And he's like, I still don't know what happened to my sister, but I'm going to find out what happened to these kids. And it's it's this whole story, and it was super, super fun to write.
And so from conversation on the phone to fully executed contracts over Christmas, New Year's in 2 weeks.
It was nuts.
Not only have you used up your lifetime supply of good luck, but at least 10 other people's as well.
I mean, my editor Erin is like magic. She also, if you read the books, in the very beginning of the books, there's didactic memos. She wrote those. She was like, "There's no way we're doing an X-Files book, and I don't get to do anything."
That's the best.
Came to my house for 4 days, and we just we outlined the whole thing, and it was such a pleasure. I had to send everything to get approved. And have you either of you ever read the Eternal Champion Cycle novels? Okay. So you'll appreciate this, Mike. The serial killer's pathology in it, his delusions are based on those books.
Oh, no kidding.
So I write this whole thing about chaos theory and stuff and, chaos magic. And they wrote back and they were like, we don't know what any of this means, but it sounds good. Keep going. Like, they were so easy to work with. And then the other thing that happened that was really cool, which Jonathan also didn't tell me, smartly, was partway through, like, once they were like, we had outlined and we'd written part of them, like Chris Carter decided to make them canon. And Jonathan did not tell me because he knew I would not be able to finish. Like, I would have been paralyzed. But it was really fun. Like, I wrote a backstory for Mr. X. Like, they just let me get away with all this craziness. And so then I was like, if DC is anything like this will be fun.
It depends.
It was really fun.
No. The X-Files thing is magic.
Although they did tell me, my biggest notes were that and these might have come from Fox, not Chris Carter, were that I couldn't take the Lord's name in vain and I couldn't say Coca-Cola. I had to say soda.
Oh yeah, well that's because of the Kinks.
Yeah,
the Kinks screwed it up for us all.
So now with DC, when Christy would say you can't use brand names, I was like, I know all about it. I know about the brand name thing. But that project.
So when you wrote your own stuff, you use brand names?
Yes, I do very often.
You never had that. Nobody ever stopped you from doing that.
No, I think in prose it's a different thing. You don't get nailed for it, and also like it's different because the publisher doesn't own any brands or anything. The one thing you cannot do is use song lyrics. Like you could use a title or like 2 words, but they understand that is not going to go well. So they don't let you do that. There's actually a song in Beautiful Creatures, and we had to write this song because we were going to use a real song, and they were like, yeah, no, you're not. So Marky's like, we'll write a song.
You can license it though, right?
Well, it did not seem like anyone wanted to go and try to license like from the giant bands that we wanted to put in the book.
What was it you wanted to put in there?
We wanted to put Led Zeppelin in there. We wanted to put Led Zeppelin in there for sure. We wanted to put Foo Fighters in there. I'm pretty sure Depeche Mode. Like it was ridiculous. They were like, no, just no.
I mean, Philip Johnson like writes half the songs that he references in his comics too. I'm sure. Like,
he does, but he also writes music to go with his. We did not.
Right. I mean, you're reading the lyrics that he writes in his thing, but he actually is singing it in his head because he actually has written the music to it. Nobody ever sees that.
That's crazy to me that he can write music too. We just wrote the words, so it was kind of like writing a poem.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true. Writers of words, of prose, and of poems get confused by people who write music.
Yeah, it is challenging.
It is a mammoth challenge if you come to it from that perspective. If you come to it from the music perspective, no.
Yeah.
It's not so weird. It is who you are. I grew up. My sister gave me 2 things. My sister was 7 years older than me, and she was stuck with babysitting me. I'm sorry, Bob. You've heard the story every week for your entire life. She was stuck babysitting me because of that 7-year difference. But she always had rock and roll on in the house because rock was just starting. We did not have 24-hour rock music stations. We had rock music programs, and if they were on, she was listening. And usually while she was reading comics.
Oh, that's so cool.
So she took her little 1.5 to 2-year-old brother who was listening to the rock and roll, and she would read her comics to me.
Aww, that's so cute.
And my entire life, I mean, the politics thing is I guess is separate, but
doubt it.
Everything in my life revolves around music and comics and politics, I have to admit. So, because that's really my background.
Writing is inherently political.
Everything is inherently political if you're a guy like me. the whole world looks political. And it is, and I'm not bragging about that.
I want to turn to something else in your career that is past but also future, and that is Joker Harley, which was your first thing that you did comics wise that was not YA.
Periodical. That was the hardest thing I've ever written.
Sure. So my wife Sherry is a huge fan of this book. She consumed it immensely and cannot wait for the next volume, which is in fact definitely coming out. Yes.
They're being where it is a huge undertaking. It's a lot of work for the artists, and they just needed more time. It's definitely coming out. It's happening.
Well, tell us about it. Tell us about what coming back to it after it's been 5 years or so, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Joker was hard too because it started coming out during the pandemic.
Yes.
So like for example, Nico Sion, who's one of the artists, who kind of like was with me on it from the start. He lived in the Philippines, and he still, drew in pencil and marker, and like he couldn't get ink. There was like a volcano in the Philippines.
I didn't even think of that. I didn't even know that.
There's volcanic eruption. I mean, like it was like one thing after another. And then there was like the thing with Diamond. So like one of the issues in the middle went out of print, which is really bad for a procedural that you have to read in order.
Yep.
But I was super proud of it. It got nominated for the Stoker Award. It has, blurbs from like some of my favorite comic book and prose creators. Brad Meltzer blurbed it. Jeff Lemire, who I barely knew, but I literally like wrote all the people that I was like mostly kind of enamored with, and was like, do you want to read my book? Mostly honestly. So one of the things about me with comics is like, comics to me it's an artist medium. Like it is sequential art. It is about storytelling with art. And like my artists like killed themselves. Jason Bidauer and Miko killed themselves on this book. And I really wanted people to see it and to comment on their work and stuff. Like that was super important to me because, like artist works on the book so much longer than you do as a writer, usually, for sure. Longer than I do.
Oh yeah.
And they had spent years working on this thing. It is a procedural. It is the tagline was like, for me was like, it is not a love story. The premise was that the Joker is a very sane, psychopathic, modern day serial killer who does not kill because he's crazy. He kills because he enjoys it. He's a hunter, an apex predator. And instead of being in love with him, Harley is a clinical psychiatrist who is moonlighting for the GCPD as a profiler to help Gordon hunt him down. It's very feminist. But it's also like very realistic. All of the murders except for one can be executed in real life. Not that I'm suggesting anyone do it.
Please don't.
Like the amount of research, like I'm for sure on a list. I've looked up things like, dosages for ketamine based on people's weight. I've looked up, how to melt body fat. Like I'm definitely not allowed, like I'm sure on like the quantity.
There's incognito tabs for a reason.
Yes. Well, I didn't know that. So now I'm sure everyone's like, or we're like, this woman is clearly a writer. I had an ex-boyfriend who I remain good friends with, who was in the Marine Corps, whose name will never be mentioned, as I promised him. And I said, I need to know something about chemical weapons. And he like calls me up and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, all against the Geneva Convention. Like, you shouldn't be talking about any of this. I can't talk to you about this stuff. And I said, like, no, I need to know like how it's used. And he was like, for what? What are you doing? And I was like, dude, I'm writing a comic. And he's like, I don't see anything about a comic. And I'm like, it hasn't come out yet. And I remember he was like, if this comic doesn't come out, like I'm coming to find you. Like I wrote him and I said, can I thank you in the acknowledgments? He's like, absolutely not. Do not ever put my name in print. Like I was in the Marine Corps. I do not want to be thanked. And,
No.
Yeah. But I mean, I did all this crazy research and, and it is also a dual story. So the front story is that present day story, but in the past, in the backdrop of every issue is a story about the Joker's evolution as a killer from the time he's a child. And I had to pitch this in a room with Bob Harris, Jim Lee, Hank Knaltz, Dan DiDio, and the head of sales at the time, who was Brian Cunningham. And like to convince them that I should be able to write this. And I knew immediately that Dan is going to think I'm going to break the Joker. So I had like a whole page. And again, my very long pitch that had a table of contents. I had a whole page of like, I'm not going to reveal his real name. I'm not going to reveal who his parents are, and how I was going to do everything. Because I knew that Bob was going to be like, and Dan would be like, you can't do that. You can't have the Joker as a kid. And I had like an explanation for everything. And I literally have no idea like how they were able to like that they said yes. But Bob was like, and Dan were like, well, we're going to be very involved. And I was like, I invite everyone to be very involved.
Yeah.
But it was really hard because it's not, writing a periodical is like an art. It is not like writing a graphic novel because you have to get people to come back the next week. And
Sure.
and I had read every book about writing. And I said to Jim, like, is there any way there's somebody like I could talk to just to like, like who's done this before? It's like, just so I could, not just an editor, but like a writer. So I could like get some information. So, they call me and tell me, they're like, oh yeah, we found someone who's willing to talk to you. And I was like, great. And they're like, it's Brian Michael Bendis. I was like, I don't want to talk to Brian Michael Bendis about how to write comics. Like he's like,
yes, you do.
Super famous. And they were like, no, he's really nice.
He is really nice.
And he is really nice.
He is
the nicest.
He is really nice. And
so
he loves to talk about it too. Like he's a good.
Well, it was actually perfect because I used his book to learn how to write comics.
Sure.
There you go. Are you familiar, either of you, with the Anarchist's Cookbook?
No, but I have seen it but I have never opened it and I don't know what it is. Is it really a cookbook?
No.
Oh,
well.
Okay. Oh, wait. Is this the one about making, what?
What? I mean, it's bombs and stuff. Yes.
Okay, that's what I was saying. Like,
bombs and stuff.
I know what this is.
It was a very, very popular.
I do have pages from that.
I have a copy here, and I've had various copies of various printings over the years.
I actually hid the pages really well because my kids were younger, and I did not want my son to find it, who was really into engineering.
Yeah, damn straight. Damn straight. You better believe it. The original publisher of that was a guy named Lyle Stewart, who was business manager at EC Comics in the 50s, was Bill Gaines' closest friend, handled his memorial when Bill died, which was, by the way, one of the most fun events I'd ever been to in my life. And he was pretty radical. I mean, for the 1950s, that was dangerous. That was very, very dangerous.
It's still dangerous.
Once again, it's like nostalgia, isn't it? Isn't that nice? But I got a copy once I became a comic book editor. Once I became an editor in general, which started a long time ago. Because if my writers were writing something that was a little too accurate, I didn't want it to be useful or used. I not only is it bad morally, it's bad.
I don't have any bombs in mine in Joker.
I mean,
functional bombs. That's the point.
Right. Well, I don't have any non-functional either, but I do have some chemical weapon stuff that you definitely can't get because of the Geneva Convention, and also works slightly differently than I described.
Right. I could get arrested today.
I unfortunately did tell you how to melt body fat, like the real way.
Ooh.
It's just really complicated.
It smells bad too.
I don't know. I didn't try it, but
okay. Don't ask me how I know. But
this conversation got off the rails.
We had ICE agents here where I live in Norwalk, Connecticut, a week ago, right after our new mayor got inaugurated, and she kicked ass.
Oh,
She just totally kicked ass, and it was below the radar because of Minneapolis and all the other stuff, and that's fine. But I was thinking, geez, if they happened to drop by my place and saw the Anarchist Cookbook,
yeah, you might be in trouble.
oh, I've had that problem. I've had that thought for half a century now.
Well, that's all right. You're not going to do anything about it. It's
Oh,
going to
yeah.
stay where it is. So, so I want to come back to before we leave this. This is the first cover image of the second volume of,
Yes.
of Joker Harley, which
And that's
it's
a
not Criminal Sanity. It's called
Yeah, so Martin Simons did the cover. He's doing all the main covers.
Martin is brilliant.
I'm a huge fan. I was very excited because I love his stuff.
It's a beautiful.
And I'm hoping I get to someday see him somewhere and say hi.
Oh, we'll come. I'll make sure that happens if we're at the same place, because Martin's a good hang too. But yes, he's a brilliant person, wonderful person. This is so. At some point, this is coming out. What is the second volume? Can you give us anything that we want to?
It's hard because we're not really saying. But the one thing I will say is it's not. The one thing that was really important to me was number one, you can read this without reading the first one. You can read them, obviously, if you've read the first one, you're going to know a lot more and, it's going to be a richer experience. But you could technically read this as its own story. That was important to me. But the other thing that was really important to me was I didn't want to do one of those books where Joker's this serial killer. And then now it's going to be basically the same thing again, but different. I wanted it to be part of that overall arc, but I still wanted it to be an interesting news story. So you're going to see things you haven't seen. You're also going to see characters you recognize from the DCU that are going to have significant roles. I don't remember exactly what they released when they said it, when they first announced it. But to be safe, I will say there are some characters that new characters that you will recognize. And it is still Harley is, it does continue. It picks up 1 year after the end of the last one.
Okay.
So
that sounds fun. That sounds awesome.
I can't say too much, but it is, it was really fun to write, and the work so far is gorgeous.
I know this
has they announced a date?
No, because originally we had a date, and then we were just not going to be on time. And the one thing we all decided was, after having all of those delays we could not help during COVID, we want to make sure that they come out on time, one after the other for the readers. So we're just letting the artists have more time to get all of that stuff done, so to make sure that happens.
And Jim Lee is the perfect guy to understand that.
Oh yeah, the work they're doing is so incredible.
You're not being
they work on those. It also comes out oversized, so they're working on those giant boards. Right. It's not easy.
I acknowledge what Bob just said, and I have nothing but total respect for Jim as an artist and as a publisher and as a mogul. And I sat next to him at the Suicide Squad movie. So
he's also very nice. He's also a very nice person.
He's a really nice guy. Yeah. I've done radio with him.
All the people I have gotten to work with at DC have been really great and talented. And there's I got to do a creep show story with Ben Abernathy, who I knew from DC and had always wanted to work with there. So, I've been lucky to have Christy Quinn as my editor at DC on this and the Titan stuff. And then Courtney Jordan works on the Titan stuff too. But I've been really lucky to have some great editors and, really just also knowledgeable. Christy's been in comics for decades, so I've learned a lot also from her as my editor about, let's stop here, let's move this here, and let's call back to this. And, it just makes me a better writer.
The comics community, and I'm not referring to the fans, but they're part of that community, or the retailers who are also part of that community. The comics community is a wonderful community. It is a terrific group of people that's getting bigger and bigger, but not dumber or more difficult. It's getting better. We're doing different stories. We're doing a much wider variety of stories. We have impossible collaborations that you never would have thought of 10 years ago.
And we have, like you said, we have more women now. It's more.
Oh my God.
Bringing in a lot more. That's what's really important to me too, is like to bring in, people who are, racially diverse, ethnically diverse, different religions, different backgrounds. Like that's how, we get to represent everyone.
Right. I can't begin to tell you, although I'm sure you understand, how difficult it was to get the others involved.
I can't imagine.
I would bring in a black artist for a series, and they would automatically be given a really stupid page rate, a low page rate, and I would bitch about that. I would say, "Oh, it's just as good," blah blah, and finally they'd up the page rate because my greatest weapon at DC Comics was being so annoying that you just give in. And which is
can't imagine that from your team.
It is, yeah, I'm sure it is the editor's greatest power.
But it's a good strategy. Just keep on it.
That's right. It is the editor's greatest power. Getting women involved was really hard.
I bet
on staff.
Oh, interesting.
Christy's
been there a long time. She's like Marie.
Right.
They've both like been around a long time, and when it was probably even worse.
I hired Kim Yale as an editor, who had been an assistant editor at First Comics, which is part of my background, but she wasn't there when I was there. And it was the most difficult hire, one of the most difficult hires I ever made on staff at DC. So much so that they don't let editors hire. I don't think they once again let editors hire people on their editorial teams.
I don't know, but I'm glad you did, because they have a lot of women editors there now, which is amazing.
Yes, and go figure, we now have a much wider variety of stories.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we have a much wider variety of readers.
Yeah.
Everyone
wants to see themselves in the work, like people want to see themselves reflected in media, which is fair.
And absolutely fair. That's how you establish connections. To a very lesser extent, we do that in quote real life, end quote. Yeah. I don't know what real life is, but whatever it's supposed to be, we do that. And maybe we'll get past that and open up our minds, and maybe that's the only way we can open up our minds.
Well, I mean, like, things in, art, movies, books, comics, all of that, like, to me is like, that's the way, like those are the type of arts that change people, because especially things like comics and film, like where there's, visual medium, like that's how you create empathy. That's how you really show people that, we all have more in common than, we have that's different. Like we really, as humans, there's a lot of things that we share. And, we all have people we love, and, unless you're the Joker or a psychopath, we all have people we love and things we're scared of. Like there's very, kind of human conditions. And I think that comics and film are very, very good at showing that. And there are a lot of studies for kids that show that it really helps them build empathy.
Absolutely.
To be able to see, how other people react to things.
I could not agree with you more, at least not without being obsequious, but yes, that is how Earth should work.
I agree. Like the comic world.
That's right.
We've been doing this for some time now, and I just want to, before we let you go, is there a piece something you've worked on we haven't talked about tonight that we don't talk about enough?
There's one thing that I've worked on, but actually many other comic creators have worked on also. I don't know if you're familiar with Civics Comics, but
No.
The New York Department of Education had a arm, well, they still do, a group called Civics Comics. And what they would do is pay creators to write comics that were then distributed for free in not only the New York Department of Education's schools, but available online to teachers and librarians and people everywhere for free. And I did one about ADHD. Greg Pak has done them. They've had, they have one that's all about like the history of hip hop, like actual nonfiction, the history of hip hop, and they have all different artists and writers that have worked on these, and they're free for people. And mine is in there somewhere. And I was very, very, they're about activism. They're about all these important things. And I was very proud to be able to also do that because it's something that teachers can use. And I just think, look, there's one about Jack Kirby. Like, people should know about them because they are really well done. And, they have all these different topics that are really interesting and, they're free, which is the best part.
That's awesome.
Let me go off on a slight tangent. I cannot begin to tell you how proud I am that New York finally put up that honorary street sign for Jack Kirby where he grew up on the Lower East Side. That, to me, and then by the way, it's near Gold Street. But quite aside from that, that was just the coolest thing that has happened in my horribly long life. It's just amazing.
I agree. I mean, and comics, I think, really have the power to change things. The whole anyone can wear the cape, like truth, justice for all. Like, I feel like this is a time in, the world where people really need comics. They need outlets, but they also need outlets that have something to say and that are, embrace humanity and that are important, that aren't just like mental filler.
We always need life affirming experiences, always. But now more than ever, because we understand nothing. Tomorrow, the world could be just totally different, probably will be, and our level of surprise will be much lower than it would have been 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's all different now. Yeah.
So I did put the link to that, to the Civics Comics in the comments right now, so everyone can.
That way, especially if there's any teachers, they can access them for free for their class, which is nice.
And I missed this comment earlier, but Mindy Newell's letting us know that she could tell you a couple of horror stories about the women in comics. Mindy is.
Oh, I can't imagine.
I mean,
yeah.
Mindy Newell is the first woman to be credited with writing Wonder Woman in a Wonder Woman.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Which was in the 80s.
And Mindy's one of the best writers of that era, and she wrote a story a couple years ago.
Don't limit her to era.
I'm sorry?
Don't limit her to era.
Period. Right? Period.
Yeah. So I thank you for bringing that up too. That's great, and I'm familiar with some of those books in there.
Yeah, I just I always feel like if especially when there's free resources, it's great.
And then everybody's favorite activist Greg Pak is always doing things like
he's amazing, and his work is really amazing too.
He is. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
I cannot wait to for Titans Together to come out, because I think that's such a great culmination of so much.
Comes out on August 4th.
Right. So
really?
we will.
That's my birthday.
Hopefully see you before then, but if not, we'll see you when that tour comes around.
For sure.
And thanks for doing this. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Kami, it was wonderful meeting you. I really enjoyed our conversation.
You too.
Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, hopefully I'll meet you in person one day.
We will.
We will.
All righty. Take it easy.
All right. Wow. What a great conversation. Super, super excited about it. It was a lot of fun.
I got to tell a Lyle Stewart story. Wow.
That's a lot. It was a lot. That was jam-packed. folks, we are going to be back here next Tuesday night. Next Tuesday night, we are going to have the lovable Joe Pruitt on the show. He is also, he's writing his own stuff. He's got kind of his own line of things, but he is also in the process, in the middle of a crowdfunding campaign on Zoop, which is now funded, but we're still going on for the return of Negative Burn. And so we will talk to him about what he's got cooked up with that. Quite a murderer's row of creators in all the best ways. And so
that was an afterthought, wasn't it?
You know, murder, not real murder. You know,
that's great.
But anyway, it's going to be good. So, folks, thanks for being here tonight. Stay safe.
Stay
guys,
warm. Stay dry.
Yeah. You know, fuck ice and whatever else you want to do. Remember, you want to read more comics because they're good for you. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for everybody being here.
All right. Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week.
This has been a production on the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?